In 1994, this country was the site of one of the worst humanitarian disasters in modern history. 100 days, 1 million lives. Today, that same country has the world's highest proportion of women in parliament, the cleanest capital city in Africa, and one of the fastest growing economies on the planet. This is Rwanda, and its transformation is unlike anything the world has ever seen. To understand how remarkable this is, we need to go back, not just to 1994, but to the colonial decisions that created the conditions for disaster. When Belgian colonists arrived in the early 1900s, they found a complex society, but they simplified it brutally. They issued identity cards that locked people into one of two groups, Hutu or Tutsi. For decades, colonial powers favored one group over the other, turning neighbors into political enemies. The seeds of the 1994 genocide were planted in a colonial administrator's office decades earlier. In April 1994, everything broke apart. In just 100 days, approximately 800,000 Tutsi and moderate Hutu were killed, roughly 75% of the entire Tutsi population. The country was left with shattered infrastructure, a broken economy, and a population traumatized beyond imagination. By any measure, this was a failed state. And then the rebuilding began. Paul Kagame and the RPF government made a decision that most political scientists said was impossible. They chose national unity over tribal identity. Ethnic labels were removed from identity cards. The word Rwandan replaced Hutu and Tutsi in official language. And a national community mediation system called Gacaca brought perpetrators and survivors face to face. Over 12,000 Gacaca courts processed almost 2 million cases. Survivors testified, perpetrators confessed. Communities decided together how to move forward. No other country in history had attempted anything like this at scale. By the mid-2000s, Rwanda's economy had begun growing at 8% per year, faster than most countries on Earth. But how? First, vision. The government launched Vision 2020, a 20-year plan to transform Rwanda from an agricultural economy to a knowledge-based, service-driven one. Then, Vision 2050 extended that ambition further. Second, infrastructure. Rwanda built roads, connected rural villages to the internet, and launched one of Africa's most modern capital cities, Kigali, which today rivals Singapore in cleanliness and order. Third, anti-corruption. Rwanda consistently ranks as the least corrupt country in East Africa. Bribery is prosecuted. Officials are held accountable. Foreign investors noticed. Then there is the gender revolution. Today, 61% of Rwanda's parliament is female, the highest proportion of women in any national legislature in the world. This wasn't accidental. The Constitution mandated that at least 30% of all decision-making roles go to women. What started as a policy became a culture shift that redefined what political leadership looks like. Rwanda has become Africa's unlikely technology hub. Kigali hosts drone delivery networks operated by Zipline that deliver blood and medicine to remote hospitals faster than any road vehicle could. The country banned plastic bags in 2008, before most European nations even considered it. Every last Saturday of the month, Rwandans participate in Umuganda, a mandatory community cleanup that has made Kigali one of the most immaculate cities on Earth. But Rwanda's story isn't without controversy. Human rights organizations have documented restrictions on political opposition, freedom of the press, and dissent. Kagame has won elections with 99% of the vote, numbers that raise serious questions. Critics argue that Rwanda's stability comes at the cost of democratic freedoms. that the miracle has a dark side, one that international investors often overlook because the GDP numbers are so compelling. And this is the Rwanda paradox. Can a country build a genuine miracle while suppressing political dissent? Or is the stability itself what makes the miracle possible, at least in the short term? Singapore did something similar. Tight social control in exchange for economic prosperity. So did South Korea in its early decades. Whether Rwanda follows their path is still being written. What Rwanda teaches the world is extraordinary. That national identity can be rebuilt after it shatters. That economic transformation doesn't require generations. It can happen in decades. That women in leadership isn't just progressive politics, it's good governance. Countries with more women in parliament consistently show lower corruption rates and better social outcomes. And that the world's media, focused on war, disaster, and dysfunction, largely missed one of the most astonishing state-building stories in modern history. In 1994, Rwanda's GDP per capita was $125. Today, it is over $900 and on track to reach $1,240 by 2030. That is a 7 times increase in one generation from the ashes of genocide. For comparison, it took the United States 75 years to achieve comparable economic momentum after the Civil War. Rwanda is doing it in 30. Rwanda's story isn't finished. It faces real threats: authoritarianism, regional instability in the DRC, and the question of what happens after Kagame. But what it has already achieved defies every prediction made in 1994. Which country should we cover next? Drop it in the comments. And if this surprised you, share it with someone who thinks Africa is only a story of conflict. Subscribe for more stories the world forgot to tell.